Right, I'm just checking that I'm recording. I am recording.
Sorry.
We're going to have a really good chat today, and it's something that has been rumbling on for quite a long while. We are going to be talking with my good friend Bryce from Esoteric Atlanta about military drafts, conscriptions. And the reason that what triggered this for me is I'm just going to share my screen and show you something that came up on my feed today. Now, I don't normally look at MSM, but I do when I'm trying to work out what the brainwashing is going on for all of us. And it's big news in both our countries. You know, there's loads of different countries throughout Europe where they either have got compulsory military service and they're looking to extend it, and we're going to talk about the issue of women as well in this, or that they're putting it in. And, you know, there's so many, anyone can do their research here. Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, who's just been chucked out for another even worse Prime Minister, um, was going to, part of his election campaign was to bring back national service. So this is happening all across the globe. And then when I spoke to Bryce about it, I was really amazed to see what was happening in the States, which I hadn't heard about. So why are you fascinated by this subject, and how do you think it plays into the bigger picture of what we're seeing across all the world?
Well, we call it what do you guys call it? We call it the draft. What do you guys call it in the UK?
Military draft, military service, compulsory military service, conscription, probably more commonly.
So most Americans will recognize that word from like the Vietnam War. That's when it got really dicey in our country and a lot. And so what that was like 1973 that they reenacted the draft. My father missed the draft by like a couple of years. Like he was a couple of years too young, which I'm so grateful because like if he had been drafted, I don't know if I would be here right now, right? So, in my issue with the draft, so for those who are not familiar, I think everybody is familiar, but you never know on the internet like what comments you're
Yeah.
gonna get. They're like, "What the hell's a draft?" So a draft is basically, and I guess it's the same in most countries, where boys, typically boys, in some countries it's girls as well. Right now in the United States, it's just boys from the age of like 18 to 26 will automatically be registered in like a database for the United States military. So if we were to go to war, they would be called for service. So they're not volunteer. Like let me say one thing before we get into this. For the men and women in both the United Kingdom and in the United States and any other country, especially allied country, we know that there's corruption in this industry, but I know that most people who voluntarily sign up to serve their countries are doing it for the right reason. And I just want to make that very clear. As an American, I very much appreciate all the boys and the families who make that sacrifice to in their minds to protect the Constitution, to protect the American people. It gets me emotional because I know that's not easy to do. My boyfriend is the son of a man who he grew up moving all over the world, from London all over the United States, Alaska, because his dad was in the military. And so I know that sacrifice for people who volunteer to do this and make a career out of the military is a lot. And so I want to say to anybody watching from whatever country you are, if you are one of those families that have made that ultimate sacrifice, thank you. That's very brave of you. And I know, at least in the military for the United States, a lot of people will volunteer after high school because the military will offer them like college courses so they can
Yeah.
get a free education while also serving and having a paycheck. So there's a lot of incredible, with all the corruption, there's also some really good opportunities there as well. So I want to make that very clear before we get started. But with that being said, for me, especially as an American, um, we our whole thing in America is freedom, right? Like you get to live the American dream. And forcing a child, because let's be real, an 18-year-old is a child, forcing them to go into war is not American, in my opinion. That is not okay. And, you know, in the 1970s with Vietnam, we had a lot of what we called the draft dodgers, which were young boys who ran to Canada. One of my favorite modern day authors, John Irving's, was a draft dodger. He wrote some really great books that are now movies, you know. And I know my boyfriend's friend, who's a good bit older than him, he dodged the draft by checking himself into a mental institution to dodge it. There were a lot of things people could do, and I don't blame them. Like honestly, I don't actually blame them because that's scary, especially if that's not something that you want to do. That's not something that yet you've been that's
And
been a
that really conflicts with your belief system, because there's loads of different things for this, which we'll come on to. But belief systems are really, really important to every aspect of our physical and emotional well-being. Yeah. Sorry. Carry
absolutely.
on. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, I sent you a bunch of TikToks because you texted me this morning about, and I was like, oh my God, that's so wild. Because I had seen these letters that these 18-year-old boys were posting online, which was literally a draft. It was literally saying, you've been put into the registry. If we call you to come serve, you have to show up at this particular military base to serve, or you're going to serve like 5 years in jail or pay a $250,000 fine.
Mm.
And these 18-year-old kids like, what is this? He didn't even really know what it was. Well, then I sent you I just went into TikTok and I found all these TikToks of people talking about this. And a lot of people are pushing back and saying, no, it's not the draft. It's just getting us prepared for a draft. Well, darling, that's literally the draft. Like why would they prepare us for a draft if they weren't planning on drafting people?
And I want to bring in the fact, such good points, that when you start seeing, so when we take the whole pandemic, the whole point is when you see the same things being ruled out all over the globe, you know there's a long-term plan and it's coming. So in lots of places, like I can remember when I was traveling around when I was 21 and I was traveling around the world, and I met this amazing Israeli in Australia, and he had to go back to do national service. So in a lot of countries historically, they've had compulsory national service, normally only for the men, where within a certain age group you have to complete a certain time in the military, and it's the luck of the draw where the war breaks out and you get sent
Yeah.
somewhere when you're taking on national service. So that's one thing that a lot of places across the globe have had quite for a while, but we're seeing come back in a lot of countries. Certainly I've seen it happen a lot across Europe, and certainly it was taught before the last general election. This was spoken about really seriously by the Conservative Party for the UK. And then you've got the draft, which is basically like, no, don't worry. Your just name's on a list, but should we go to war, and we'll come on to some more complexes behind that in a minute, then you're in the lottery. And if you're picked, you have to go or you suffer these consequences.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that strikes me is that's just like saying about, no, there's no problem. Everyone who's watching this is going to be very familiar with the digital ID, the vaccine passports, or what they're doing with the monetary system. Oh, no, don't worry. They're just putting it in, but it's not going to be compulsory. And we've seen that's a lie. So why are they not suddenly, we know this has been going on for a few years across different areas, but look at how the build-up was to the whole pandemic. All these things, they plan so far in advance. And just because something's been done in the past, there's going to be a lot of people who've got grandparents or parents that have been part of drafts and conscriptions and compulsory service in forces. But we now know, I don't know the true history about a lot of stuff. It's something I'm still actively pursuing, that what we're told and the reasons why these people are sent to war was not what they thought they were going for. So it's all part of the same agenda, and it's very scary because our youngsters now, let's face it, in most of our countries, the people that are watching are not prepared in the way that back in the 1920s, life was really tough.
Yeah.
You were fit. You didn't have junk food. You had to do physical, everyone was physically fit. They weren't driving around in cars and sitting at a stationary job in front of a computer. But to send people to conscript people or draft people that have got no mental resilience, and we've talked about this a lot, they've got no physical capabilities at all, is literally a completely different situation to anything I think we've seen before.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely totally different. I mean, there were like kids in World War II that were like 14, 15, 16 years old that were lying about their age to get into to be able to serve their country. It's a completely different mindset of people. And 18-year-old, especially, I sent this to you. I'll be careful how I say this, but I was like, it's interesting that this generation of like 18-year-olds, we'll say, for example, have been subjugated to government education where they're teaching gender ideology,
Yeah.
where they're saying it doesn't really exist. But in the United States, the same government is definitely knows the biological difference between a boy and a girl because only boys are getting drafted. You
Yeah.
know, so it's kind of like you can see how they've weakened people to then put them in a situation that's going to be nothing but bloodshed, let's be
Yeah.
honest. And somebody said one of the things I saw a while ago before you someone showed their son's draft letter and was like, I guess we're going into World War III. Like the
Yeah.
parent was like, I guess that's what's happening, which I think we're already kind of in it, but it's very different.
Yeah.
But the physical combat side, getting that letter, this parent was like, I guess this means we're heading into World War III. And
Yeah.
that's why these kids are getting these letters. And for me, I know, Catherine, you have kids in that age group. I have a nephew who's about to be 12, so he's 6 years away. And I told my boyfriend, like, I'm grateful he's 6 years away, but look how fast these last 6 years went by. That's terrifying. Now that, I mean, I don't have my own kids, but now that I have a nephew that is getting close to that age, I am, as an aunt, and terrified. Like, I would be terrified.
I spoke to my son about it because both my children and all my nieces and nephews and all my friends' children are all exactly in that age group. And I actually spoke very briefly to my children about it, and they were like very much, well, it depends what the cause is and whether you believe in the cause. But we all know, because we are speaking to a very an audience that are really taking it upon themselves to question things now. Keep questioning, keep questioning, keep questioning. We all know that what we're told about all these things, and the bit of history, the fact is anyone who's looked at the state of all the wars for the last 100 years, we all know that it wasn't what we were told it was. We know there was so much shenanigans going on behind the scenes. It's just incredible, and so much manipulation. So the thing is, even if it was voluntary, and I will say to yourself, I mean, when I was at university, two of my best friends were in the Navy and they had their whole degree paid for, and one of them has stayed in the Navy and had an amazing career in there. So there are a lot of advantages, and thank goodness we do have people that are prepared to do these brave jobs. Absolutely amazing. But there's a huge difference between volunteering for something and not. So if you are in a war situation, you do not want to be in a troop or whatever they call them, platoon or whatever the situation is, of people that do not want to be there and are not
Right.
physically or mentally equipped to be there. You need to know that people standing each side of you have got your back, that you can trust them, that they're not going to leave you behind enemy lines, all these things. This is what the people that volunteer are, the type of people that have the personalities and the traits that are literally made for this. And you want to be in this, that the brotherhood, the sisterhood of people that have those capabilities is just incredible. But you do not want to be surrounded by a load of people that are forced to be there and are completely ill-equipped to be there, because that is just only going to learn
Traumatized. I mean, even the people who volunteer to go get traumatized, but you've got somebody who's been traumatized from the start, like that they didn't want to be there. And you bring a good point, Catherine. I mean, there's a TV show that I watch. I think it's great because I watch it for spiritual purposes, but it's called Special Forces. And it's like basically like our Marines. I don't know what you would call your Marines in the UK, but the Marines are like the toughest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, they're like, I have a friend who served as a Marine, like they get put through. I mean, you have to be tough. And so this TV show, if you guys get it in UK or in America, watch it, because it's special forces from
Yep.
the Marines in the United States and the equivalent of UK. So they partner together. It's like 4 or 5 guys, and we know the United Kingdom and the United States are the strongest allies. So if we go to war, UK is going to war too. If UK goes to war, America's going to war too. Like, we are literally cousins and brothers in that aspect. And so, these military guys have served together a lot, these UK and American guys. And they take in the show that's been 2 seasons, they take celebrities who are going through something and they put them through.
Yeah,
Literally put them through.
that. Yeah.
It's crazy what they go through. And a lot of people quit. Like a lot of them drop out and quit because they can't handle it. So look at the intensity of what these, and this is just for celebrities for a TV show. If your kid is going there because he's been drafted and he's got to go through this training or go to jail. I mean, and I will say this, Catherine, a lot of the TikToks that I found after we were texting is a lot of people were saying, I would rather my kids spend 5 years in prison. And a lot of the kids are saying, I'd rather take the 5 years in prison.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't blame them for that either. And one of the TikToks, the kid was like, what has America ever done for me? I can understand generations past where there was the American dream, where there was something to fight for. There was liberty and freedom to fight for. But at this point, no one can afford a house. everything's we're watching a banana republic happen around us. I'm trying to be careful what I say, guys. If you don't know what that means, look it up. But we're watching all this happen, and now you want me to go and fight for you?
Well, particularly since none of the corrupt politicians in any of our countries, regardless of where, anyone who's watching this is going to be in a very similar situation with the corruption that we're all facing. You don't see them and their children going off to do it. Very rarely. I mean, I know Bobby Kennedy is different. I know he's got children that are. But also, it's like no one trusts the information that they're being sent to war in. This is the difference, is we are now in a stage where so many people have got access to more information. It's still very, very difficult to get hold of true information, in my opinion. But so many people can smell a rat and they know that what they're being asked to fight for is not real. Or is manipulated for the gains of the people that are sending you off to do this. And this is where it lies in the thing, because there's a lot of people that when they're passionate and got a belief system will be prepared to, like anyone who's a parent, you'll do anything, you'll die to save your children. That's very, very common with anyone who's a parent. But it's a very different matter to being asked to perform in that way for something that you really don't believe in, that you don't trust is going to change the world for a better. And, in the age of where we're at now, we're in a very different stage to where we were 100 years ago, where there should be different ways to resolve conflicts rather than massacring whole generations of people. I've got a really good friend in Lithuania, and there's still like 4 times more women than men in Lithuania because they've never recovered from the male losses that they suffered in the Second World War and the subsequent wars since. So the implications of this, it's like, why I wanted to discuss it today is because it's all part of the same agenda that we're seeing, and it's which bits of the population are you going to pick off next, and why are we seeing this so ramped up now when they have literally spent the last 10 years trying to make sure that most, and of course there's exceptions, there's going to be lots of exceptions of people watching, but where most of the young people are not in good physical health,
not in good mental health,
they're not in good mental health, they've been poisoned from everything. It's incredible. And I did want to bring in now, whatever we all think or don't think of Trump, I noticed that he said in his talks this week that he's going to be reinstating and compensating people in America who got forced to leave the armed forces for not taking the intervention.
Wow.
Which is incredible. Now whether these people follow through on what they say they're going to do in campaign training is a different matter. But there's a lot of talk from all these different avenues, isn't there, about getting the militaries up to scratch again.
Well, and it's, we do need we obviously need every country needs a strong military for your own defenses anyway. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about like, if a civil war were to break out here in America, or a second American Revolution, I would support that completely. And I know a lot of men in America who are, I'm not going to say the M word because I don't know if I'm not going to spell it either, because a group of people basically who are training to take care of business, basically. I can get behind that because that is in our Constitution and that's taking care of your own people. That's getting rid of the actual problem, right? Which is the people who are sitting the draft ladder. I'm trying to kind of talk around the subject.
The enemy within, the enemy
within.
The real enemies are not outside your borders; they're inside.
They're inside, like the Trojan horse. And the thing is, though, is the men who are doing that, who are preparing that, are in their 40s and 50s. So there's also, and granted, I will say, right now in 2024, people like us in our 40s and 50s are a lot healthier and stronger than 50 years ago, and we're prolonging our life. So I can see, but there's a wisdom, right? For when you're in your 40s and 50s, you have a deeper wisdom and understanding, whereas when you're 18, you don't have any wisdom at all, right? You're still a kid, and so I want to be, as you're saying that, like, if you have something to fight for, if there is something you literally need to protect, and this is the last thing, the last resort to protect your family, to protect your country, absolutely. But when you're being dictated to basically, we know depopulation is number one on their agenda. We know that. And so how convenient right? That this is happening. And it is, I sent you some funnier TikToks because
Oh,
people are
brilliant.
literally laughing at the fact, like at this, no offense to this generation. It's not, every generation evolves and changes. But I sent you one for Heather McDonald, where she's a comedian and she's kind of an awake comedian. She does podcasts about stuff we talk about, but she has two boys around the same age, and one of her boys got the letter. And what did she say, Catherine? She was like, "You picked the wrong boy." She's like, "Good luck, America. This one doesn't even know directions. Like,
Yeah.
you picked I would not have picked him. I would have picked the like."
And then she said, because she's got a daughter as well, and then she was like, and they're looking at drafting the women as well, which, let's face it, women, you can't have it both ways. You want to be treated the same as men. But there are differences, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But then she was like, you're drafting all the women, and good luck with that. I'd be like, which combat boots am I going to put on? Do I look good in this against this tank?
War.
Yeah.
What jewelry should I wear today, guys?
It was very funny. But the point of the matter is look, we talk a lot about mass fear, and whether this is going to happen or not. The fact of the matter is, by it being rolled out in so many different regions across the world, all at the same time, should send massive warning signals. Now, whether that is because they actually are going to send people into combat, or whether it's because, again, they want to have a heightened state of fear. But one of the things that I think we've talked about so much is basically, look, you should be wanting to get yourself fit and healthy, mentally fit and physically fit and healthy, not because of the fear that you might be drafted to go off and fight, but because of the fact that it gives you the resilience and the choices. And let's face it, if you need to disappear off into the wilderness and get away from this, you could actually do it and you could actually survive. If you don't have those skills, you are pretty much, it's like lambs to the slaughters, really.
Whether it's in your own country or in a foreign country, yeah, you're done. And that's it too. I see a lot of people posting TikToks now where they're running and they're like, I'm running not for my physical health, but so that I can outrun the new world. I won't finish that title. But and people are like, yeah, because we need to be able to because we're starting to, again, the enemy within, we're starting to see that, and that there's a story. I keep thinking about this story. And I can't remember which war it was. If it was World War I or World War II. And I think it was Russia and Russian side and a German side. And there's this story. So you guys tell me in the comment sections if you're familiar with this story, but it just shows you
my
like
dogs are waking up for their walk. They always do it.
They're like, we're dogs. We don't have to worry about being grappled. Where there's I think it was the Russian side, they had a vocalist, and every night they'd be laying in their trenches, the enemy's over there, and this Russian guy would sing every night, and it was beautiful. And then the Russian guy got sick, so like a couple of nights he didn't sing, and they got a message from their enemies, the other side, asking if the singer was okay. I guess it makes me emotional, asking if the singer was okay, because they really appreciated hearing that music at night. That makes me emotional. Because they
humanity.
Yeah.
Oh.
These are young boys. I'm getting emotional. 18 to 20 that are having to fight each other. They have no, I mean, let's think about it, guys.
They've got no right with each other. It's self-defense.
It's government.
Killed. I can't say that word anymore in this video because it was.
I know. And could you imagine like hearing that somebody sing every night and you're in this horrifically scary situation and just hearing that beautiful voice, that art every night, and it's your enemy, but you enjoy it so much that when it stops, you send a message to the other side to ask if he's okay.
Yeah.
That shows you what humanity really is at the heart of it all, and that these boys in this story, this real story that happened, did not want to be there. They weren't enemies of each other. They were forced to be there. Their governments, their countries were fighting each other. And you're right, when someone's charging, regardless of who it is, you have to react in self-defense. And that story gets to me every time. I think that's one of the greatest like silver linings of this whole situation with all of us all over, because we have such an incredible international audience, Catherine, is that we now understand that all of these situations historically that we're told have happened, these wars, aren't about us. The people of a country don't really have a problem with the people of another country. We're all human beings and we all want the same things in life, right? And we realize now that our enemy isn't each other. It's the enemy within, as you said, it's this group of people. And I mean, what do you think the solution is, Catherine? Do you think, what if everybody around the world has just said no
I
and
think
didn't show up?
this is why I wanted to bring it up today, not about, because this justice and information, but the solutions are the same, regardless of whether we're talking about a digital currency, whether we're talking about intervention passports, whether we're talking about medical passports, whether we're talking about conscriptions or drafts. Is like understanding that we have to take a stand and do things differently. And what upsets me so much, and we've talked about it so much, but you and I, we see, and we're not talking about the majority of our audience here, but you look at any social media platform of any, like I was watching a really good video that Candace Owen did the other day, and the comments are just disgusting. The way most people are conducting themselves now and thinking that just because they don't have to show their face and say it to people's faces, that they can get away. And it makes me so cross that we're all still fighting ourselves. We're fighting each other. We're doing all their work for them. We're putting so much energy into looking what we can be offended for from someone that's saying something, rather than saying, how can we bind together and really change things? Because all of our governments are working in ways, in collaborating in ways that we might not understand at all, but we know it's certainly not got our best interests at heart. If we can just stop being so petty about the things that we're disagreeing with. I do not care how you choose to feed yourself. I would prefer you to make as ethical decisions as possible. So if you're going to eat meat or animal products, I prefer that you spend some time and effort to do that in the kindest way possible. I'd prefer you to not support industries where they're mass poisoning us all, but whether what diet you choose to follow, I've got no interest in whatsoever, quite frankly. You do what's good for you. But if we want to change the world, we have to look at those daily decisions and how we're behaving to each other. And any podcast, any YouTube video, any Instagram account, it's disgusting the way we, as the great unwashed, as they like to call us, are behaving to each other. And if we could just stop and support each other and start banding together and saying, no, I don't want my children to be constricted, but equally, just as importantly, I don't want yours. If people choose, and they're adults, and they make a choice that this is their purpose in life to join, that is absolutely fine. And we are eternally grateful for people like that. But we have to stand up and treat other people's children in the way we want our own children. We have to treat all of ourselves with respect and humanity. And when I talk about humanity, I mean all creatures, great and small, that, all living things. Because otherwise, every single time we're having these petty arguments, we're just playing into their hands 100%.
And it comes down to choice. Absolutely. That's what it all comes down to. If you want to be in the military and that's your choice, there's power in that. You're doing this on purpose. You want to be there and you have your own autonomy. But if you're forcing somebody into this situation, it's a completely different energy, right? It's a completely different fear. And we know they feed off of fear. And you're right. It's just, think about that, guys. It's just, because I know we're going to get pushback from this. I know that a lot of people feel like it's patriotic, that you should be. And I disagree. I think that as much as I support the military, especially as an American, I think what's patriotic is allowing people to make their own choices about what they want to live and let live. Let them do what they want to do in their life. That makes, in our Constitution, it says that every citizen, every person has the right to pursue happiness. The key word in that is pursue. And what my happiness is and what your happiness is are two different things. And the Constitution makes a lot allowances for that. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, you can do what you want with your life. And so where is that when we force our young children in the United States to go to war, to put their lives on the line when they don't want to? We're taking away their pursuit of happiness. And let's say that, whereas somebody who wants to do this, that is their pursuit of happiness, right? And we're even, let's just say a kid gets drafted at 18 and he goes into the battle for 2 years, but he comes back alive. Have you guys looked at pictures of people from like when they enter the military versus a year later? That child is being massively affected by what they're going through. And so the rest of their life is going to be affected. It changes the brain chemistry by what they experienced. And again, if that's something you want to do, and you're right, Catherine, I think you watch that Special Forces show,
Oh,
the British
incredible.
guys, the American guys, their energy, their disposition, you're like, yeah, that person was
That's
created.
who I want next to me. That's who
Yes.
I want, because they are, as you say, they've got the skills. It's such a good
The
point.
mindset to do it.
Yeah.
But not everybody is created, just like not everybody is created to be an artist, and not everybody is created to be a doctor, and not everybody is created to be a teacher. Not everybody's created to be in combat. And that, I just, for me as an American, it's an affront to the American Constitution. You should never force a child to do something that is inhumane in their in what they, and you're right, Catherine, there are so many. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, they don't believe in war. Now, I think the Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, so I'm not excusing them, because I think they have their own problems. And I've heard, like, if they get drafted, they're put in desk work. But it still goes against their religion, because they don't believe in the military at all. So we have freedom of religion in the United States, as most Western countries do. So where is that allotment? It's just well,
Yeah.
even these things, right?
But
Like
that's
these,
what I was going to say. How can you say my body, my choice,
yeah,
and then draft people? You
yeah,
can't have it my body, my choice in this situation, but not in that situation. And the thing is, anyone who's forced to do something like that, their chances of survival are way less, because they're going into it without the skills, without the will, and it's just absolutely terrible. And also, it's like, everyone says to me, I'm just using it as an analogy. I'll open up another can of worms. Go for it, everyone. Animal experimentation. I do not believe in animal experimentation.
no, I don't either.
Now,
Yeah.
if someone volunteers themselves, if an adult volunteers themselves to take part in medical trials, and there can be loads of reasons for that. Trust me, if I had some terrible terminal disease and there were no other options, I'm probably the type of person that would be open to trying anything. I'd probably go down the different alternative route more, but who knows? You don't know. I mean, I'm not second guessing. You can't second guess what you do in situations until you're in there. So many experiments. Look at the Milgram experiments, where we've spoken about this before, where, lab experiment, get people, put them behind a screen, the other person's been given an electric shock. 70% or something of people will turn up the level of the shock, until 66 or 70, somewhere around that, until they would theoretically have killed the person, because someone in authority is telling them to do it. So we surprise ourselves. Humans, we can't say what we do until we're in that situation ourselves. And I think, if there's one thing all these discussions are doing, is saying that we can't just say, just because it's always been done like that before, this is the way forward. If you want to create a new world, you have to recreate something different. You can't just keep behaving. If you keep behaving in the same way, you're going to get the same results. And quite frankly, I can't think of a single leader that, and by leader, I'm talking about the self-proclaimed leader of politicians and presidents, or whatever the situation is in your country that you're in, that I would trust to have our best interest at heart.
Yeah. No, and you hit the nail on the head, Catherine. How many leaders in the world have their children enlisted in the military? I mean, are their kids going to be drafted?
Mm.
And so what should, I mean, for me, I mean, this is, part of me is like, I'm so grateful I'm 41 right now, because I know they're not going to be drafting me. But then again, I'm looking at you and my own nephew, and the stress and the worry on parents' faces. And a lot of the parents who have kids being drafted right now, their dads were drafted in Vietnam. So this is a generational trauma that's coming back around again. And so should there be a coalition of parents internationally who've bound together to, like, support their kids in saying no to the government? Like, I mean, I guess there's not really an answer. Like, I guess our audience can pitch in too, especially if you have kids who are in this age group. Like, if you were somebody like Catherine and me that thinks that the draft should not happen, that this should be military should be volunteer basis only, what is the answer? Like, and we've been facing this Goliath for years now. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of us lost our jobs because we said no to this. A lot of us, like you and me, Catherine, have dealt with heavy shadow banning and censorship because of what we're doing. We just keep pushing forward, even though it's exhausting. So this is not our first rodeo, which is good and bad. Like, it's good because now we're used to this. So what's the answer? How do we course correct this with this Goliath that's sending these letters out to our kids? How do we, from a grassroots effort, fix this situation?
It's such a good question. And for me, we've got to bear in mind two things. So they're talking about over 18. So the fact of the matter is, whatever you are as a parent, you have no say in it.
Right.
But
Oh,
we
that's
can
true.
do
Absolutely.
the reason why, but that doesn't mean we can't advocate for people, because you have got the wisdom and you've got more tools in your toolkit often to do that. Now, not always, because some young people are incredibly capable to do that. But I think the fact of the matter is, for me, this is why so many of us, and including everyone who's watching this, so many of us are having these awkward discussions that make us very unpopular, because now more than ever, when the interventions came in, we had to have those difficult discussions, because when you're young, you do think you're invincible most of the time, because most of the time you're a young body can get away with so much more than when you're full of toxins when you get older and you're a little bit more decrepit. So I think having those conversations within your family, having those conversations within your communities, and for me, I suppose all I say is, like, let's not sweat the small stuff. Let's not argue about who you support politically. Let's not argue about who's right and who knows this and who knows that and who wants to be a carnivore and who wants to be a vegan and who wants to be a boy and who wants to be a girl. These things are all such distractions. How can we be better citizens that's allowing everyone, whatever country you're in, the opportunity to say yes or no to things that literally will change your life forever?
Oh, it's such a good point. I mean, yeah, and when we talk about this with like the junk conspiracy cul-de-sac, where they get you like all distracted going in circles where you think you're talking about something enlightening, but really the real problem is over here. I mean, I was just telling you this morning, Catherine, I recently just covered Amelia Earhart,
Mm.
and fascinating story. And I can't tell you how many comments I got where people brought up her gender, and it really pissed me off. And I thought, there's no point in talking about her gender, first of all. Second of all, it's cruel. It's cruelty to assign somebody who, and for me, she looks like a woman. Like, first of all, second of all, it doesn't matter because of what happened to her. It doesn't add to the story. And how would it be, there's that golden rule, Catherine: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How would you feel if you're a biological woman? Catherine and I are both biological women. We get our periods, right? Like, Catherine's birthed two babies. Like, we both have had people accuse us of being the opposite sex, and we're not. We are biological women, and it hurts. It's cruel. That's cruelty. And so we see this nastiness in our own community of people who are aware and awake, of creating this nastiness. And, well, that's really a boy or that's really a girl, when it's really got nothing to do with the story at all. And it's cruel. What you're saying is cruel. If you put a comment about Amelia Earhart you think that she's a boy, you're a bully.
Mm.
That's bullying. You just,
And it's such a distraction, as you say. It
distraction.
doesn't add anything. Now, sorry, I interrupted a bit then, but if you're Michelle or Michael Obama, the reason why I think that matters is if you're deliberately putting yourself in a public position and you're deliberately going out to deceive people,
Mhm.
because let's
That's
face
different.
it, that is completely different, because
And we have proof.
deceit,
We have proof of her being, we have proof of
yeah.
this. These other people is speculation. That's all it is
And
speculation.
also, most of the people, if they are in that situation, a lot of the time, we now know, wouldn't be their choice anyway, and it would be
Right.
generational trauma and decisions making for them. And even if it was their choice, it's like, there's a big difference between deceit, and if you're prepared to lie about something so fundamental as that, if you're prepared to lie about whether you've actually birthed those children, if you're prepared to lie about whether they're actually your children, if you're prepared to deceive, to live a completely false life in a public perceptions, you are pretending to be someone that you're not, and therefore you are deceiving. If you can deceive in that, your whole life is deceived. So why would any of us believe anything you're saying? But if it's a private individual, then you know, you're not deliberately trying to deceive someone, then it's no one else's business. It doesn't care. It wouldn't even enter my head. It's like I've never once asked someone what political party they are. I've never once asked someone what gender they are. I've
Yeah.
never once asked someone, you
How
know,
many people they're boinking, because that's what it comes down to, right? Like what's happening.
yeah,
And you're right, because like Amelia Earhart, she didn't have kids. She didn't want kids. She just wanted to fly a damn plane. That's all she
exactly.
wanted. So why does it matter? What it's funny, even with that, I was thinking about that. Like if Amelia Earhart were alive today, you would think she was a woman, because what if you look at videos of her, she's climbing planes. Catherine and I could probably climb a tree like that, because we
Yeah.
grew up active. We grew up as an active women, and she definitely was a lesbian, but who cares, right? And that was her big secret. And we would just call her a tomboy today, right? So like
Exactly.
why do people have to get into this nastiness where all these people, all these big stories with these conspiracies, they have to create a nastiness, almost like the superiority, where they want to feel better than that. They want to feel egotistically better than this subject of the story. And that's where the cruelty comes in. And that's where the distraction comes in. In the meantime, while we're over here in this junk conspiracy cul-de-sac trying to figure out who has a wiener and who doesn't, they're drafting our children.
And this is the point. I think, it's like the agendas are huge. I can completely see why we all, because Bryce and I have been sucked into many of them, and we still will be, and we'll get lots wrong, and we talk about lots of the stuff that we get wrong. And the whole point is now the things that are happening now, it's another level over 2020. It's taking up to a completely different level, and a very dangerous level in my things. And I'm not saying this to put out fear at all. I'm putting it out there to say, let's all just concentrate on the real issues. Let's concentrate.
Yeah.
How can you support each other? How can we share good quality information? How can we advocate for ourselves? How can we all stand together and say, no, enough is enough? And, of whatever your belief systems are. And I've thought long and hard about this, and I cannot see a single benefit of making this not voluntary. It is
There's
literally
no benefit.
just sending people off to slaughter, and it's putting the ones that have volunteered at a far greater risk. If someone doesn't want to be a bungee jump instructor and you put them on, they're nervous, they're going to make a mistake when they're weighing you or tying your knot or anything, because their heart's not in the job. So probably repeating myself too much, but let us know what you think. What we're really interested in is, what do you think we can all do? How can we really turn things like this into a positive? What can we do? Because the implications of something this going through are so huge across the globe that it's not something that's a nice to have. It's something we really do need a solution to.
This is the pro, and I as we close out, I don't want to toot our own horns, Catherine, but I feel like for 3 years we've been saying this, like, stop with these junk conspiracies. Stop talking about people you think are dead that are actually alive. Like, stop, because there's another thing. They're just, this is all, if you follow any older truthers, like people who've been awake for 20 years, they'll tell you that the powers that be will put junk conspiracy out to distract you
Yeah.
again while they do their agenda over here. And I would say like 90% of the people, of course, a lot of our audience are aware of this, so we're kind of preaching to the choir, but like 90% of the people who consider themselves truthers are just as asleep as the people they make fun of, right? And so now we're seeing the reality of what's happening, where they are literally drafting our babies. And I think that, and as you're saying this, Catherine, I'm like, I don't even think in the America, like, I don't even think you can run to Canada anymore, because they're probably going to be drafting Canadians too.
Oh, completely.
So where are you going to go? Mexico? Like what? Like this is a global issue, and we got to put all the junk conspiracy. At this point, it doesn't matter who's dead and who's really alive. It doesn't matter who has a wiener and who doesn't. That doesn't matter. What matters now is they want to depopulate, and they are literally sending out letters for that at the moment. And you are so right, Catherine, for the parents who have children who have voluntarily gone into the military. You must be so proud of your children, and I would be very proud of mine if they made that choice too. But you have to understand, Catherine said something very important. Your child's safety is at risk if the child next to him has been forced to be there. So we've got 2 children whose lives are at risk now. So even for the parents whose kids are proudly in the military, what can you do to support the parents and the kids who don't want to be in the military? Because this puts everybody at risk. Think about the United Kingdom soldiers and the American soldiers. We always fight together in the same barracks. So if you got a kid from the UK who's been drafted and he's been put in a barrack with American soldiers who weren't drafted, the whole barrack, and vice versa. If you got a kid from the United States who's been drafted and he's put in a barrack with the United Kingdom kids, those United Kingdom kids their lives are in danger too now, because this one kid is nervous and terrified and doesn't want to be there, and it's going to change the energy of the whole barrack. And so we need to, like, it is more important than ever that all the citizens of the globe come together and figure out a way to protect each other and to protect our militaries too, like to protect the military, the servicemen and women who want to be there, so that they're protected and their integrity is intact. And so I don't have the answers. I don't know.
No, I don't have the answers, but these are real problems now. And again, it's not from a fear space. It's just like, these have to be talked about, because we can't wait. How many of us knew that this was even going on? I mean, most of us don't look at the mainstream media.
Yeah.
Which is good in a lot of ways, but actually I realized I'd missed a lot of this.
I learned from TikTok. I learned that this is happening from TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's so
let us know your solutions. Let's be kind to each other in the chat. Let's make sure that we're a community where we are being kind, where we are being respectful. And I really can't wait to see some of your creative solutions. So, and if anyone is in the military and they want to come on and discuss this with Bryce and I, we'd love to have that.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah,
I would love that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone. We will be back next week. So for anyone that's new to the channel, and I know there's quite a few, Bryce's channel is Esoteric Atlanta. She's on YouTube, she's on Rumble. All the links will be below. Please do connect in, and we alternate 1 week on my channel, 1 week on Bryce's. We've both been away for a couple of weeks. Join us next week on Esoteric Atlanta. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye. So I really hope you're enjoying this podcast as much as I am. And I just wanted to take a little break to tell you about the amazing products by the sponsor of this podcast, the biophotonic EMF and bioresonance devices, which help us take our healing to the next frequency. So let me start with the bioresonance devices. Biophotonic have two amazing little devices, the little BioNexus and the biophotonic, and both of these are really the next generation in bioresonance devices. So let's start with the little BioNexus. This amazing little device literally sits in the palm of your hand, and it's now my go-to support, especially when doing my daily manifestations and affirmation practices. But it will balance out my frequency to work on whatever needs balancing for me right here, right now. So what are some of the benefits of this little BioNexus? Improved energy, decreased inflammation, supports our immune system, psychological homeostasis. But also it supports the integrity of the cells, improves our memory, cognitive, emotional and psychological states, and speeds up recovery. And just like we've been talking about today, it really improves human consciousness support. Now, the other bioresonance device, the biophotonic, absolutely amazing little device, comes preloaded with a range of therapies. And this will clear parasites, giving active protection. You can wear it with you. It comes in a little pouch that you can wear around your neck, and it detoxifies heavy metals, clears EMF radiation out of cells, cleanses bacteria and viruses, detoxes chemicals and toxins, DNA repair, pain repair, you name it. And it's even got calming meditation practices that, well, complexes that you can run to strengthen the aura field, and frequency packs can also be added to your water. I think we all know the detrimental effects now of mobile Bluetooth and EMF radiation. They've been extensively studied, and I've done loads of videos on it. So minimizing our exposure is crucial. So what's really key is both the biophotonic and the BioNexus. They're standalone, lovely little devices that don't require Bluetooth connection, a Wi-Fi connection. You don't need to buy any frequency packages. There's no subscription fee, and you don't need a mobile phone to control them. There's no electrodes. They're completely wireless, ready to use straight from the box. So you can get these and a full range of EMF protection devices that you can use for yourself and your pets. Don't forget to use coupon code CE20 to get 20% off all products, including EMF protection. Thank you, and now back to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.